Well, hello, everybody. I am so excited today to introduce you to Ed Kaler. He is an amazing illustrator and especially does a lot of children's books. And Ed, you have been doing this for a long, long time. How long have you been doing this?
I've been freelancing for 28 years.
Whoa, that's all, just 28 years. Wow, that is so awesome. So Ed, tell us a little bit how you got into becoming an illustrator.
Well, my first professional work was actually when I was in art school. I was 18 years old, and part of the financial aid package was doing a work study program at our local planetarium. And
Interesting.
so I was hired to do artwork for star shows and planetarium shows and some of their newspaper ads and various gallery posters, things like that. And it was really my introduction to the world of commercial art because I was a fine art student, actually.
Oh,
so,
wow, wow.
so my first day on the job, they came in and asked that I do a paste up, and I had to sort of pretend I knew what they were talking about.
A planetarium sounds like a really cool gig. I mean, I live in
It was
Southern
a lot of
California.
fun.
Yeah, we've got the that big planetarium down here. So
Griffin.
Griffith Park Observatory. So
Yeah.
that sounds like fun. That sounds like
It
a lot of
was fun. So that was my introduction. And then, of course, I was only 18 at the time and still in school. And then I got married and then, of course, had to do some non-art jobs for a few years while we were still trying to make life work. So, but I always did freelance on the side. I managed to scrap and get a few gigs here and there. And then I became a cartoonist for a number of religious magazines around the country. And that kind of built up something of a name recognition. And some of those magazines started to ask me to do actual editorial art.
Wow, that's amazing. That's
Yeah,
cool.
so I did that, and then oh, I guess it was about 1987. I did a freelance magazine cover for Concordia Publishing House here in St. Louis,
Mhm.
and about 2 weeks later, they asked that I come and work for them. I
Wow,
worked on
that's awesome.
staff. Yeah, it was fun. I worked on staff there for several years as a freelance illustrator. But one of my requests when I took that job was that I would be able to still do freelance on the side. And they signed off on it with some reservations, but they allowed it. And so I built up a clientele. And then in 1994, I left there and started my own freelance business.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I noticed because you have a lot of Christian stories you've done, and we'll show some of those pictures later because our authors are Christian authors, so
I
I'm
see.
sure they
Yeah.
would be very, very interested in that.
Yeah.
So let's walk through the process. I know that you've got a couple different pictures I can show right now of how you get started. So I'm going to share the screen and show like kind of a concept art if you want to talk about how you came up with this one and what you did for this one.
Sure. Okay. Well, as you can see, this is Elizabeth. This is for a book I'm currently working on. It's about a little girl who lives next door to a family of hyenas. They're new to the neighborhood and they're very nice folks, but they tend to be very loud and disruptive
Just a
to the
little.
community. And so the author and we chatted about this a number of times on the phone, and I basically just start getting out my sketchbook and Prismacolor pencils, and I just start sketching around. These are actually a little further into the thinking process. These are maybe about 2 steps down the road. Really, what I start with are literally stick figure scribbles. They'd be unrecognizable to most people, but in my mind, they get the juices flowing and they head me in this direction. And so this is simply working on some character studies for Elizabeth and seeing
That's
where we want
awesome.
to go. Yeah.
And then at what point do you bring the author in on this?
Well, let's see. I think from this stage, I took this girl with her hoodie and her hands, kind of, trying to close out the noise of her new hyena neighbors. I had about 4 or 5 versions of her. I think that the other one on the lower left, I developed her a bit more as well. And at that point, then I showed the author a sketch that's probably maybe 20% more finished than what you're seeing here.
Okay. Okay.
Not thoroughly colored or anything, but and so then the author, they give their feedback. This author, Chris, he said, well, I had a couple of them that had some very contemporary, I guess, somewhat edgy clothing, and he didn't want to go quite that far. So he asked that I rein the clothing in a bit, and it wasn't terribly radical, but just a little more than he was
Right.
thinking. He just wanted it, I guess, to be a little more, middle of the road.
Okay.
So that's the kind of things, and so I'm sure that was fine with me.
So I'm going to show you the after. So this is the
Yeah.
before for everybody looking, and now I'm
Mhm.
going to show you the after is right here. So that's the after.
Yeah, yeah. And this one is still not the actual final Elizabeth, but she's pretty close.
Okay.
He thought that she looked more angry about the hyenas than perplexed. He wanted to make sure that her demeanor was not one of anger and frustration. He wanted her to be more, oh, this is an interesting challenge. How can I help?
She looks annoyed too.
Right.
What is going on? What is
Yeah,
going
yeah.
on? Okay.
Exactly.
All right. So I have some other ones that you gave me that I'll share as well. And so for the cover jackets, I noticed you do a lot of animals. So
I do.
let me show one of the animals that was really cute.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, this is the turtle and the terrier. And
The
actually,
turtle
this
and the terrier, I love it.
turtle and terrier. And this is only a self-promotion piece. This was not actually for an assignment. This was
Oh, wow.
just so when I have a few spare minutes, I simply like to do things that are, I think, kind of a pleasant thing that I can put into my portfolios. And so, yeah, this, I have no idea what they are discussing, but I thought, well, here's looks like the turtle
Super
has something to
cute.
share.
I love this one. I love this one. Let me see.
Thank you.
Let me see your other animal ones. I know you've got a dog one, right?
Oh, yeah, there's Roughing It. Yeah, Greg Trine is an author in the Los Angeles area. I've done a number of books with Greg. Um, yeah, this particular one, it's a little boy, I believe, acquires a magic kit, and he learns how to do tricks and whatnot. But something goes awry when he does a certain kind of trick on one of his friends, and it actually turns his friend into a dog. So,
I
and
love it. I love it.
yeah, so things, that's when all the trouble begins, and they have to. But I believe the dog then helps him solve some mysteries or something like that, if I recall.
Oh, that's so funny. That's so funny. Yeah, because he can go into places. That's so funny.
Yeah. So it was you can see the part of the spell was that the dog had all the clothing went off and the dog.
Oh, that's so cute. I love it as a cover. I think it's a cute cover.
Thank you.
Absolutely cute. All right, so let's see some other cover jackets you've done, because I know you've done some other ones. You do a one with the giant, and then you've got a spaceship one. This one's really cute. Kind of reminds me of George Jetson kind of vibe.
Great, thank you, because it was sort of an homage to that.
Oh, perfect. I didn't
Yeah,
even know
this.
that.
Thank you. I'm glad you
You
recognized.
didn't,
the
you didn't, you
influence.
didn't pay me to say that, so.
Yeah, yeah. This was the first one I did with Greg. He had seen my work, I believe, on children'sillustrators.com, and well, as soon as he described the book, and he led me to his website and showed me the kind of fun young readers things. They're just really fun, and they've got sardonic wit, and so immediately in my mind, being, I guess, in my age group, the Jetsons came immediately to mind. So I thought, oh, why, I don't want this to look, and he was very agreeable to it, and I was glad, but I knew immediately I did not want it to look like Star Wars or Star Trek or any
Oh,
contemporary thing. I wanted this to look retro, 1960s television, Saturday morning. And he was good with that. He's probably a bit younger than me, but not so young that he couldn't appreciate that. And so that was, this is about a grandmother who has a spaceship in a secret hangar underground, because she actually works for the Navy or something. I forget what exactly. She has, she has
Crazy stories.
yeah, she has
Crazy
a secret
stories.
career that her grandson knew nothing about, and they
Wow.
popped into space to look for her husband, his grandfather, who was abducted some years earlier.
Oh, how funny. I do notice that this gentleman, this author is like a little bit in the older age category. So it's ages 8 to 12. I like how on the bottom he's put like what the age group is. I think as a parent, that's a really good thing to do so that you're picking it up, knowing kind of what the age group is.
Absolutely, yeah, and his that's important for his books because a 6-year-old would not get a lot of the humor.
So
And the
is it
humor,
a picture book? Is it
no, they
writing
only
book?
have spots. They had some grayscale spots inside. Um, yeah, he because they're more young reader than picture books. We would do some various grayscale spots for his. I think I may have a sample of some of those. I'd have to see what's in the
And then I'll look again.
yeah.
I'll go afterwards. I'll take a look and see if I've got those. But that's a good thing to realize is this is the cover, but then inside is more young readers with just little gray. And I'll try to find some of those to show those.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's another cover that was really cute was this one right here with the giant.
Yeah, yeah. This was
Same guys, 8 to 12.
exactly, yeah. Yeah, all of his books seem to be in that age range. Generally, what he did here, what he often does is he takes an old fairy tale and gives it a whole new twist. So in this one, the giant is actually the good guy, and Jack, who climbs the beanstalk, is he's basically under the dominance of a nefarious uncle who is who is using him
Oh,
to
okay.
he's using his nephew to steal the golden eggs or something like that. Anyway,
Wow.
they're
Wow.
they're a lot of fun, and
Wow.
they're there too. And Greg, as many of the authors do, they give me considerable freedom to come up with the image and the look and what kind of a vibe. So here too, I didn't want it to look completely Disney but I wanted it to still have something of a retro kind of feel to it.
I love all your retro stuff. Retro's in right now anyway,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So I think that's cool that you're going in that direction with it. So I know that you've also done some Christian type things and stories. I know that one of them you did was the woman at the well with Jesus.
yes.
So
Yeah.
that's one of your pictures. I like that. That one looks really good.
Thank you, thank you. And
Was this a picture book or was this
this
a?
was actually a self-promotion piece as well.
Oh, really?
Um,
Okay.
I did this one, believe it or not, about the same time that I did the turtle and the terrier. What I was doing here, as well as with the turtle and the dog, I was working out a more subdued palette. For so many years, so many of my clients preferred a high key primary kind of palette.
Yeah.
But then
Yeah.
I kind of noticed that style kind of shifting in recent years to people using more tertiary colors and subdued colors. So those two pieces in particular, if I would have done this piece 20 years ago, those greens would have been very vibrant and Kelly green or something like that. And the clothing would have been, the sash on Jesus would have been a much brighter red. So I've grown to really actually love this this kind of palette. And apparently a number of clients have as well because it has caught eyes. And so I've had a number of books now that I've purposely trimmed back the intensity of the color.
That's interesting. So do you find that nowadays the color palettes are going more subtle and subdued rather than the bright primary colors?
There's both. There's both. There seemed to have been a trend in the last few years of going to either a more muted palette or a very limited palette. I think it's maybe past now, but about 5 years ago, it seems everyone was using sort of a turquoise blue with a bright orange.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I think you have a picture like that. Let me Because you've
Yeah.
got one that's kind of almost the same color, so something like that.
Yeah, and this one, yeah, exactly. Had a very monochromatic kind of thing. So yeah, this one,
Monochromatic meaning, just so that everybody's
most
following.
basically one, well, technically it's all one color range. This would actually be almost like a two-tone because it has mostly tans and blues. But rather than using a whole spectrum of colors, monochromatic generically means just bringing it down to one or two kind of colors, and then having different values, meaning the different lights and darks of those colors and different intensities. So some of the buildings, the gray, for instance, which are technically kind of blue, they're subdued, but then other buildings, like the one on the lower left, the bright, almost white bluish, is more intense, so more saturated in color.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then sort of playing that off of a very subdued tan. So
Mhm,
it's kind of
mhm.
a fun sort of, gets me back to my old color theory school days or something.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So this was kind of in a few years back, not as much
Uh,
in rage now, but it is a style. So if somebody really likes more of the
yeah,
monochromatic look.
yeah, yeah. And this one was actually done, this is actually one that I sell prints. So this was done for, I have kind of a side business where I sell, prints just for, people want to hang something on a wall kind of thing. So this was actually done for that. And yeah, I mean, I think those limited and muted palettes are still popular enough and acceptable. And the high key primary colors never went entirely out of style. Basically it's kind of, everything goes nowadays almost. It seems everything's acceptable, and it's mostly what the client, what their sensibilities are.
Okay. And what they like and what they're gravitating towards.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you had this one was, which is another building one.
Mhm.
So this was another, geez, oh, him walking on the, or riding in on the donkey, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Palm Sunday.
On
That's
Sunday,
exactly
the
right.
palm sound. That's
Yeah.
cute.
Yeah. So yeah, and as with the previous one, my enthusiasm there was to get into all this wonky architecture. Wonky, I think, is a technical term. That's when you purposefully sort of skew the perspective and make it look kind of, again, kind of retro. Think of the old, well, I don't know if some of your authors, I'm sure their ages vary, but if anyone recalls the old Bullwinkle cartoons, they were
Yeah.
drawn with this purposeful skewed perspective. Everything's just kind of not quite right, but right enough. So you'll see, for instance, the walls of Jerusalem in the background, they're wonky, but they're pretty true to real perspective. But then by the time you get to the foreground, things are kind of anything goes. And that's intentional, and it's just to make it look fun. And it gives a lot of freedom for adding details to the buildings and not having to worry about whether every jot and tittle is taken care of.
But it works, even though it's not to perspective 100%, it still works and it looks, like you said, it's fun.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think it's a lot of fun. Let me see what else we've got here. We've also got, I think we went through all of those, but I want to show some of your other ones because they are so good. So let's see what else you've got here. You've got this gal.
Yeah, she's the approved Elizabeth for the hyena book. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
wow, she looks a little bit different.
she did. Yeah, she made the cut. Yeah, they simply wanted her softened up. Again, if you recall the previous in the green hoodie, she looks pretty irritated. It looks like she's going to maybe go and yell at the neighbors. Whereas this Elizabeth is going to go and creatively think of ways to help them
Yeah,
understand what
let's
it
show
is.
that before and after because that one's
Yeah,
really
exactly.
good. So
Yeah.
that's the before.
So that's the before.
Yeah,
She's not completely angry, but she's
and
pretty
that's the
irritated.
after. I think I really
Yeah.
like the after a lot better.
Oh, thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
she is a lot softer and not as annoyed or
Yeah.
or angry or whatever, they didn't want. So
Yeah. Well, that's exactly right. He was very intentional about making this character a helper rather than but being a hater or something or judgment.
Yeah, no, you pulled that off because the other, yeah, I could see, but it's interesting because not one is right or wrong.
Mhm.
What I'm hearing you say is it's up to the author, like what vibe do they want to throw off? What's the intent of the character? Like as an author, you really have to know that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now, if one of my other authors were doing the book, they would have been emphasizing her anger, and maybe the book would have been about, well, how is she going to deal with her anger? But he was very clear. He wanted her to be very pleasant, and so
Yeah,
I'm
no,
glad
that,
it comes across as that.
yeah. So I do like that. There's not right or wrong. You just, as an author, need to know where you're going with it. Because
Mhm.
an illustrator can only do so much, but they have to know where you're going or what's your intent for the book, or the more you can give them the background of the character, the better I would think your illustrator is going to draw it. Is that true, Ed?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up because for me as an illustrator, it's never about me simply providing a product or even a service. It's really about collaborating. It's
Mhm.
about getting into the head of the author. They call me because they've seen my work and they want it to look like my work, and they're clear about that. But
Mhm.
they also need it to be their character. They're not
Right.
simply asking me to
Right.
come up with. Otherwise, you would almost have two books. You would have Ed's book, which is all art, and then you'd have the author's book. And but yeah, so getting having lots of phone conversations or Zoom meetings, simply getting in sync with each other. And I feel it's my responsibility to become in sync with them because they're the author. It's their product.
Right. Right.
They called
Right.
me, and it's so I respect that this is their creative work at first, and they respect that I've got my expertise. So yeah, getting it together. The wrong thing would be for me to insist on the first version and say, no, I think she ought to be this. Well,
Right.
I don't feel that I have that right to take over their creative.
That's good. That makes a good illustrator because you're listening in on what they want. So let's see what else you've got here because I know you've got a few of them that we didn't cover. This guy's fun.
Oh, that's one of the hyenas. Yeah, yeah,
He
that's
is very loud. He is very
he's
loud.
very loud. He has a bullhorn. Yeah, he's the sort of 13-year-old hyena. His
I
name
love
is
the
Mario.
shoes.
Thanks. Well, thank you. Yeah, that's yeah, when we well, it was very interesting because the initial meetings on the phone with Chris Obermeyer is the author. He had another set of animals in mind, and at first he was thinking about skunks and then I forget what other animals. And I thought, well, and he appreciated. I said, I think we need to be careful how people might perceive this. If skunks are considered smelly and this and that, that might not be exactly what you're going for because now you're kind of getting into people's personal hygiene or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And when it became clear that the book was more about these neighbors being disruptive and loud, I said, well, I think hyenas are pretty loud. And
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
he was on board with it. So that was kind of that was one of the rare occasions where I actually got to change the characters,
Oh, interesting. That's good.
only because, but it was through a brainstorming. It was a mutual.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was
yeah,
still a
yeah.
collaboration. I didn't foist it on him. I simply suggested, what, hyenas are loud and they don't. They don't represent negative maybe so much as sort of clueless. And that's what he was really going for. They're not bad
Oh,
neighbors.
yeah.
They're just sort of, they're new to the neighborhood and they don't really know how to behave in human society. And then
You nailed it though. I mean, he just
oh,
looked
well, thanks.
exactly the
Thanks.
part.
Yeah, his only change on this guy, his teeth were a lot sharper at first. And he thought that was a little menacing. And so I thought, yeah, I see that. So we rounded up his teeth. We took him to the orthodontist and fixed him up. And I just kind of threw the shoes on as an afterthought. And he was real excited about that. He says, "Oh yeah, that we didn't want him fully dressed.
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
it kind of, becomes more about anthropology. But yeah, so it's a lot of fun. I'm about toward the end of that book. I see you had Buffalo Burt
Yeah,
up.
I'm gonna put Buffalo Bird up there too. Buffalo Bird.
There we go.
Yay. He's a
I got,
cutie too. I like how you're doing your animals. I like
thank
your
you.
noses. Your noses all have those curly cues in
Yeah,
them.
those curly Q things. Yeah, I kind of
They're cute.
adopted that
I
a few
like
years
it.
back. I thought, well, I thank you so much because I really love drawing cartoon animals. Yeah, I guess again, it's the Saturday morning cartoon influence on me. I loved all the Bullwinkle, Tennessee Tuxedo, all those talking animals, and
I have no
yeah,
idea what you're talking about. Ha ha ha.
yeah, that's right.
You
These
know,
are all,
cartoons are just not what they used to be back in the day when we grew up.
no, no,
So,
they were so much fun. I know I got to be careful not to sound like that guy. Well, back in my day, but they really were fun, and they
yeah,
were wide.
yeah.
In addition to Anna, a daughter that I know you have worked with, we have an older daughter, and I used to tell them bedtime stories about this character I made up named Buffalo Burt. And I would, I don't know if it was good
It's
or bad.
cool. Okay, I just have to like, how cool is it to have a dad that tells you stories and who's an illustrator and then can do the book for you of all the stories your dad have told you, like growing up? That would be fun. That
That
would be
would be
a lot of
fun,
fun.
yeah. And if they ever come up with the budget, I'll do it. No, I'm just kidding, just kidding. No, that would be fun. No, but yeah, I used to like to make up these stories. And this Buffalo Bird was a guy that I told them that he would fly around in our backyard. And for a time, I think they believed maybe that happened. But then when I did this piece, I sort of appropriated the Home on the Range song where the
Yeah,
deer and the antelope play, but I twisted into the deer and the antelope are putting on a play, kind of like,
that's
Little
cool.
Rascals or something.
I
And
love it.
yeah, so that was just kind of
Well,
just a
let's see what
thing.
else you've got, because I know you've got so many good ones, and we can be here all day, like looking at them, but they're really fun. So,
Oh, Deborah. Yeah, this is Deborah from the Book of Judges. This is another one. This was an author in Seattle who did a book about government in the Bible, kind of about different kings and
oh
queens and
wow,
judges,
okay, okay.
and a very fun book. And so yeah, so this was Deborah sitting under her palm tree and extolling wisdom and judgments and things like that from the Book of Judges.
That's so cool. Even the detail in the ladybug is really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you've got a lot of detail in there. Okay, so you've got a little lizard, our little lizard guy.
Oh yeah, he's from Giant, the book Giant, the Jack and the
Okay,
Beanstalk
so
cover.
going back so that all of our authors are tracking with you on the book Giant, that was for 8 to 12-year-olds. So it was not a picture book.
That's right.
It was a young reader's version. And so you said there were some gray pictures inside. So I'm assuming
Yeah,
this is one of them, right?
this is one of them. That's right. Yeah,
Okay.
actually, these were
Okay.
used for chapter heads.
Oh,
Yeah,
beautiful. Love
this,
that.
this lizard or iguana, whatever this little critter is. Yeah, he's kind of a subplot. He's kind of in and out of the story. So we
So
just
when you have a chapter heading like that, like how big did you shrink him down? Because sometimes the icons are like babyish, sometimes they're half a page. Like when you shrunk him down,
he was down pretty small, almost to icon size. So he would have,
okay,
I believe, be up. If I recall, he was up by the number for the chapter
okay,
up at
got
the
it.
top of the page. So
That's
yeah,
kind of a bummer because he looks so great to shrink him down that
thanks.
small, you
Well,
know. So
well, he shows up in some other scenes where he's in a terrarium, I believe.
oh, okay. Because I'm like, I don't want to waste him. He's so cute. Okay, you've got an
Thank
elephant
you.
one. This one's really cute. I like this one too. I like them all, but
Thanks. Well, thanks. Yeah, yeah. Just a scene of a circus thing going on there, a monkey and an elephant and hula hoop, and got all the things necessary for a good circus show, I suppose.
was there any other ones that I'm thinking? You've even got a girl in a wheelchair, which is always good. I know that
Yeah.
the books now are putting more
Mhm.
disabled students or,
That's right.
other have issues. So it's not,
Yeah.
it really opens it up for inclusiveness. So
Mhm. Mhm.
she's a
Yeah.
cutie. I like
Well,
her.
thanks. Thanks. Yeah, lots of yeah, and of course I'm always aware of lots of diversity and ethnicity and things like that. So yeah,
That's
lots of
good. That's
it.
good.
It's kind of interesting. I don't know if it's interesting. Maybe it isn't interesting. I'm not sure, but I've illustrated a lot of books for a number of African American authors whom, maybe 30 years ago that would not have been so common to use someone like me for a specifically, a book centered around an African American family, for instance. But I'm glad that I think one, they see in my portfolio that I do have considerable
That's good.
diversity, and I'm
That's
glad
good.
that it's not considered, that I'd be a deficit for
That's
their.
good. Well, no, you're just so good.
Well,
Do
thanks.
you have an example of that?
Oh, let's see.
I don't know if it's in what you sent me today because
Yeah,
I'm not
I
sure if it
had
is.
some, oh yeah, well, um,
I don't think so, but
yeah, that's too bad. Here I am making a point of that. Now I don't.
he does have it. He does have it.
There's a astronomy girl.
Your planetarium days are coming back.
That's exactly right. Yeah, yeah.
That's so funny. Okay, I'm gonna show one more. I mean, I can go on forever, but I'm super
Right,
excited
right.
about. So a North
Oh,
Pole with all the different characters in it. So
yeah, that's a book I did called Santa's Dog. It was the author Joanne Skye in Nevada. She she contacted me and we did a whole book about Santa having a dog park in the North Pole. And
that
the
would
book,
be fun. That would be
it
fun.
was fun. Yeah, it was really the book's main theme was about rescue dogs. So,
Oh, that's perfect.
yeah.
So from what my understanding is, the more complicated the backgrounds, then the more expensive it is because you have to do more work
That's right.
rather than more of a simplistic background. So this has a lot going on with a lot of different characters.
Mhm.
So what I would assume that this takes more work and would be more expensive to illustrate because it has more of those details in them.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I'm glad you brought that up. But when self-publishing authors call, often they have in their minds a very elaborate two-page spread picture book. Think of
And
perhaps.
let me stop right. So just so we're on the 2 page means you open it up, right?
Yeah, that's when you
And
open
that's
it
called
up.
a spread, just so you guys know.
Yeah, that's called a spread. So if you have
Okay,
pages 1 and 2, that's called a spread. Yeah, thank
okay.
you. I drift into the technical language sometimes.
No, just I want to make sure everybody's tracking with us.
Yeah,
So,
and so they think of elaborate picture books. I often say, if you're thinking like Polar Express, for instance, a very
oh yeah, really
painterly,
elaborate.
elaborate, fully illustrated book. And so we chat about that, but when I let them know what kind of a price range that's going to be, understandably, that can be intimidating. So I suggest to them, I said, but there are other things to do. For the hyena book, for instance, I said, well, how about this 2-page spread? That's going to be a considerably high budget, but there are workarounds that will not look like a degradation. So I said, if we have
Wait,
some
wait,
pages,
wait. So
oh,
degradation.
just to bring the quality of the art down.
Got it. Okay, just so
But
we're on
more
track.
importantly, the quality of the book, so that it doesn't look like
You
a
cheapened down.
yeah, cheapened
Let me
down.
put it out and just so you didn't
Yeah,
look cheap.
yeah, that's right. So it will look cheap. So I said, well, we can have some pages where you have a full page piece of art on one side and then all text on the other side. But I said, we can also have some pages where it won't be a full 2-page spread, but we'll take that 1-page scene and just sort of drift some elements into the next page so that when the reader gets a hold of it, they're seeing kind of 2 pages, even though they're not really. And they're just seeing that there's more going on. And then I also offer to the folks other options, or to simply do spot art, or what we call a vignette. That's usually a picture there's still white space around it, but the elephant and the monkey, that would be a vignette.
Okay.
That it kind of fades out to the white space around it. And I said, that can be a very attractive book and not look like it's cheap.
Okay.
So
Okay.
there are options,
And I'm thinking your Deborah picture was pretty simplistic. It wasn't
Yes,
crazy background. So that would have
that's
been
right.
more of a less expensive look, but it still looked very,
That's right.
very professional, but it wasn't all tricked out with the details on the background. It just
Exactly.
had the kind of
Yeah.
the palm trees, and those are pretty, I would think, easy to replicate.
Very, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's right. There are ways of doing it to where it doesn't look cheap. It doesn't look, oh my, this is something you would find, discount store or something, very inexpensive. So yeah, that's right. And those are good conversations. Authors should never be shy about sharing, if their budget simply isn't at an upper level
Right,
price point,
right.
they shouldn't be at all embarrassed by that. They should simply, that's where we get together and say, well, let's look at the story. Let's see what's important. Does Deborah need to have every palm tree and mountain in the
Yeah,
land
yeah, yeah,
story?
yeah.
Can it be captured in a way that still is very engaging for the kids and not look like you just sort of, cranked it out?
That's good. I'm glad that you give those different levels. So as we're closing out this interview, do you have any other suggestions that you want to leave our authors with as they're creating their children's books?
Well, if they're creating a book that is going to require illustration, I would suggest they, think about what they envision it to look like. Now, if they're not, sometimes writers are not as visual as folks like me, and no shame in that. If they really don't have a vision, or they have trouble articulating a vision for the visuals of the book, then go online and find the illustrator that appeals to you, and then have just real good, honest conversations about that, and let the illustrator kind of help you along in seeing what this might be.
So getting sample, what I hear you saying is maybe going on to Amazon, finding some of your favorite books and getting that as an inspirational style
Yeah,
for your illustrators so that they can kind of
yeah.
see this is the style I'm going for so that they know how to mimic that.
Exactly. Yeah, and to find the illustrator, yeah, and then there's plenty of sources online to look for freelancers like myself. I'm on a number of professional venues where they find folks like me. So yeah, exactly. If in their mind Dr. Seuss style art appeals to them as opposed to Polar Express or vice versa, it's all good. There's no wrong answers. Um, the only wrong answer would be if you call the wrong illustrator and you expect them to be like somebody else.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's
Yeah,
true.
so
That's
that
really
would be,
true.
I'd say, by all means, save everyone agony yourself,
Yeah.
and because yeah, if you really would not be helping yourself as an author if you call somebody and say, well, I want you to draw like Dr. Seuss. And if they
Right,
don't,
because everybody has their style, and
yeah,
that's
everybody
why
has.
some of your pictures, you can see your style.
Mhm.
And a lot of your stuff is a lot of that old retro stuff that I like as well. So
Yeah,
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 so you can kind of get a vibe for your illustrator as well. So well,
yeah.
thank you so much for coming on. And I know that our authors are just really excited and love to have you on board as a Square Tree illustrator and if our authors want to move forward. So really, really excited. So thank you, Ed, for your time. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sherry. You're very welcome.
All right, you have a good day. Bye.
Bye-bye.